the first thing I want to start by saying is that abortion is technically, at least, legal in all 50 states still.
Okay.
That is really important to know.
Don't panic.
For all of these states, it is
okay.
legal. For all of these states that have passed these 6-week bans in the last few months, none of them have gone into effect yet.
Good to know.
They are... There's a political strategy behind passing these laws that's aiming to get to the Supreme Court. So that's the key thing to know. If you are in Ohio or Mississippi or Georgia or Alabama, it is still legal for you to access abortion.
The Belt States.
And there are people who are trying to help you access the abortion care you need. So that's really important. And I'll give you a full list of like all the resources. You can put it up.
And we'll definitely be posting that not only to our Patreon, but it'll be in the description of this episode.
So there's a bunch of places that there are laws about abortion, right, at the state level. All of this is done under the umbrella of Roe v. Wade, which is a Supreme Court decision. Yes. We will talk about like it as federal law, but it's not a law, it's a Supreme Court decision. Mm-hmm. This is the moment where I always clarify, I'm not a lawyer. I talk to lots of lawyers all of the time.
That's, I think, the problem with us. None of us being lawyers, we see these new articles of,
and you're like, I don't know
bills.
What this means.
We don't know what it means, so I'm not gonna lie. I thought that it was kind of put into effect already, but good to know.
I'm not a lawyer, but I am a lobbyist, so I'm very concerned about the goings-on of government, right? Okay. So, I also, NIRH is a nonpartisan organization. If I had a bunch of pro-choice Republicans to talk about, I would, but I don't. So,
I want your opinion on something, Danielle. I used to work with a woman that voted for Trump, and we would always sit and argue about it. And she said to me one day, "You act like they can turn over Roe versus Wade. Like, you need to relax." And I want to know your opinion on that because we're watching all of this go on within the last 2 years of having a shitbag run the office. And I am curious to know what you think as far as Roe versus Wade goes and if that really could happen to us.
So, yes and no. Supreme Court decisions are unlikely to just be flipped over.
Yes.
And what Roe says is that you have the right to access an abortion up to 24 weeks or later than that if the life or health of the woman is in danger or in cases of fetal inviolability. That is the standard of Roe and the subsequent cases that came after it, right? So that's like our national umbrella. What we think is going to happen is that states have been passing laws, and I don't think it's going to be any of these more recent laws. I think it's going to be ones that have already been passed, that have been working their way through the court system and getting to circuit courts in an effort to get to the Supreme Court. And what I think we're going to see, and this is just sort of guessing, but like educated guessing, is a chipping away at access. So abortion will still technically be legal, but the states will be allowed to put in place so many barriers that you won't be able to access it. So,
as far as the cost, as far as the
clinics being able to be open,
clinics being open if the patient specifically is could be made available to have care, insurance issues,
age, documentation status, right? All of those
just start
things. Putting
rules in place that this is not new. These are things that in many of these states have been going on for years and years and years, or been setting the stage for
getting the Supreme Court that we have now.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, as far as even just funding for, like, the organizations, I think we all know of Planned Parenthood, but even when Trump came into office, that was one of the number one, that was one of the first things he did was cut funding for that organization amongst other organizations, correct?
Sort of. There's already a prohibition on federal funding for abortion care. It's called the Hyde Amendment.
You guys brought up the Hyde Amendment on your last show.
Okay. It's named after a guy named Henry Hyde, who said, I can't make it impossible for everyone to get an abortion, so I'll just make it impossible for poor women. Like, said it out loud. Said the inside part outside. And what that means is that Medicaid in most states can't cover abortion. In some states, like in New York, we put state dollars in to fund abortion for Medicaid patients.
But
so poor people in New York can get
every state, though.
Abortion care.
Right.
So he didn't actually cut abortion funding. What he cut, or what he's trying to mess with, is funding for family planning, for contraceptive care, for sex ed, for all of the things around it, and saying, I'm cutting money to those terrible abortion organizations.
Wow.
Because he can't actually, there's no money for him to cut. He did implement, there's a thing called the global gag rule, which goes back and forth with the parties, which says when Republicans are in charge, they say that international organizations can't get U.S. aid dollars if they're going to talk about abortion. So, like, in foreign countries,
So it
they're not allowed
becomes a
to
huge political thing
so
on a global
it becomes
scale.
a huge geopolitical issue. And he's trying to implement basically a domestic gag rule that says that organizations in the U.S., if they're going to provide or refer for abortions, also can't
Or
get
claim
this
that they're
Title X dollars.
pro-choice.
That's
then
kind of
they
an
wouldn't-
ongoing fight right now.
That's a lawsuit that's working its way up. So the answer to the Supreme Court question is, like, it's not going to... I don't think it's going to get overturned, but I do think that it's going to get chipped away at enough that the states will be able to block people from actually having meaningful access to care. So we have this, like, overarching umbrella of, like, the rights that Roe gives us. And then there's a bunch of states that had bans before Roe v. Wade, which passed in 1973. So prior to 1973, they passed bans on abortion, which were then deemed unconstitutional by Roe. So if Roe were to be overturned, it would still be banned in those states. We
Automatically,
have automatically. There's a bunch of states that post Roe v. Wade passed what we call trigger bans, which is if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, then it becomes illegal in these states. So there's like six of those.
So they're already like they were just preparing
Well, they
for
did
that?
that in
Was
like
that
the
something-
late 70s.
Okay.
This has been done for a while. There are states that have essentially total bans, but none of them are in effect. And these are the ones that we're hearing about in the news, right?
Okay.
Ohio, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Missouri,
The South.
Iowa, Kentucky, North Dakota.
Bible Belt.
Places that you
Okay.
might expect. And then there's a bunch of places, and this is always really important for me to talk about, that are actually passing proactive expansions of abortion rights. And that's something that we did in New York this year.
Okay.
New York, Massachusetts, Washington, Delaware, Illinois just did it like last week.
Up here.
Now in Ohio,
Oregon,
it is
Nevada.
correct. Like, isn't Ohio like completely?
That's a 6-week, right?
Ohio is a 6-week ban.
That's
but
completely
again,
That's the same
No,
as
yes.
Alabama.
again, not in effect though.
I actually, before we had this episode, a few days ago, because I knew it was coming up, called Planned Parenthood, asked for medical records, and I wanted to see how many weeks I was when I got my abortion. And just so you guys know, I got an abortion the week after I found out I was pregnant, and that was 8 weeks. So,
Which is crazy because so when I got mine, I actually argued with them. They told me I was 6 weeks. I knew to the day. I knew when it happened, who it was with, because I didn't even have. I knew what it was, and I was exactly 4.5 weeks. They told me 6.
It's because of the way they date pregnancy.
Which is so that also affects. So I could have gone in there, even though I'm telling them the exact date this happened, who it was with. I knew 4th of July weekend. Anyways, I was literally 4.5 weeks. This is when we went to Tampa, bitch. But anyways, I was 4.5 weeks. I found out I knew my body, something wasn't right. I ended up taking a goddamn pregnancy test in a Kroger bathroom because I was shit-faced scared. I was
This is an excellent Florida story.
I was actually in Georgia, but we had we ended up going to Tampa that weekend. I went back home, and my body just wasn't right. I knew I was 4.5 weeks, and on when I have my abortion, they will give you a picture. So I got the picture of my stomach, and my mom asked me over and over, "Do you want to see it? It was nothing but a dot.
Sure.
It was literally a dot, and I didn't feel connected at all. We'll get into my story a little bit later. But I was 4.5 weeks, and they told me I was 6. So for you to know your time, and what was that your exact date?
well, I called them and asked, and so like that was on my records. But I do remember letting a week go by because I was stressed out at work. So I was like, okay, so like
This might be
maybe my
normal.
period will come.
Yeah.
Well, right.
And it didn't. But that's the thing. It's like crazy when I actually took a pregnancy test the night of our Toronto show because the app was freaking me out. My app was updating me like, you're 1 day late. And I was like, fuck. So I'm on the phone with my girlfriend. She's like, bitch, you definitely pregnant. I was like, no, but I feel like cramp. She was like, I did too. I was like, so I go to
She's like, take care of it while you're in Canada.
Right.
That's how I'm feeling.
Cut it out.
Dude, I walked to I don't know what grocery store, like whatever they have there. But anyway, couldn't even like hold on. Like, I don't know why we all do it in like supermarket and like pharmacy bathrooms.
Because there's no waiting.
But I can't.
Well, I was an age. I was like, I am not doing this at home, and I was shit-faced scared to even bring it back to my. All I know is like when I actually told my mom that I was pregnant, and she listens to the show, so shout out to you, Mom. Hi, Mom. I literally had it in my hand and I took 2 because the first one I was like, man, maybe the first one broke.
Yeah.
So I took the second one.
There's a reason they sell them in 2-packs.
No shit. So I took the second one. That shit came. I just started bawling tears, and so I walked home. I couldn't even tell my mom, so I walked into her room, and at this point, I'm just literally bawling, crying, and she's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Tell me." And she just started shaking her head. I think she knew, and all I did was show her.
Handed it to her.
I handed her the things, and then that became like a whole conversation because my mom, I won't say the number, but I was her first child after her having multiple abortions. So it was to a point where she loved having me. My last sister was almost aborted, and that's a conversation we've had. And so, like, her immediate response was, okay, what do you want to do? And she gave me that option, but she, like, went ahead and shared how much she kind of regretted the abortion before me. And seeing how her daughters came out after, like, the ones that she didn't have. And so it affected her mentally after. And so she just wanted to make sure I was okay with it.
Shout out to your mom for having that conversation with you that
She
way.
did. And she even all the way up into me going to the clinic, it was just like, are you sure this is... And she literally had the conversation with me about her regrets of her abortions. Just, because she just didn't want me to feel what she felt. So, and then I know Weezy's actually a miracle baby. So was there any type of conversation that you and your mom had? Because I know you being your mom's only was a really big deal.
So my mom had me at 40. She didn't know she could have kids, I think. And my aunt, rest in peace to my aunt, but she had like 5 miscarriages or something. So like childbirth is like really hard.
Wow.
Which... Not like it's funny, but I'm just saying to one of my friends,
I ain't gonna get pregnant.
when I was like pregnant, I was like, the way she be going with my family, I don't even know if it's gonna stick. Like I mean,
not stick.
I mean, bro, my grandma said it. My aunt had 5 miscarriages. My mom had 3. I was like, maybe
it'll all
and
work
also
out.
lots and lots of pregnancies and in miscarriage.
Yes,
like,
I know.
Outside
And
of
we
your
don't talk
family
about
history,
that enough either.
That's not even right.
Incredibly regular.
Like miscarriage stigma is a
so
whole other conversation.
Fucking normal. Anyway, when I ended up having my abortion, my mom was super supportive. Like, I was in my opinion, like, I don't care. I'm 28 years old right now. If I got pregnant today, I'm not ready. Yeah. I still feel like a kid. I might be financially stable, but I'm not mentally stable enough for a kid. My mom was talking about how, she's like, I just accepted my life without a kid as much as I wanted you. She just talked about that postpartum, about how bad it was and how regretful she was feeling. That's a real thing. I couldn't imagine thinking I was going to have an abortion, felt shamed enough or guilty enough to keep it, and then end up with this kid the whole time. I know people in my life right now that probably shouldn't have had kids.
We all
can't
do.
afford that.
Yeah. We all do.
100%.
And it's also okay to just not want children.
Dude,
Like, it's okay to just not want children.
Forced motherhood sucks.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with having an abortion, and also want to add the shaming around abortion. Like, I felt it too. And, like, even from friends, like, making jokes about it. Like, it's funny and we laugh and whatever, but, like...
Is it, though?
In the moment, they're like, damn, again. And, like, you laugh. But you laugh, I think, to cover up how you might really feel.
Fair.
You know? Yeah. I mean, we all got to feel a little something.
You asked earlier about, like, besides religion, which I don't think is I think it's a really big piece of this. Like, what are the other sort of, like, forces around the stigma of abortion? And I think there's a couple of things. One, religion is a huge piece of it.
I would say family.
Absolutely. But also, all of it comes back to a need culturally to control women. It also obviously impacts other people who can get pregnant, but this cultural need is to control women. And the best way to control women is to keep them out of control of their fertility. If you can't control when you're having a child or how many children you're having, or if you're having children, you can't be in control of your economic life.
Nope.
You can't be in control of your career.
Your happiness.
You can't be in control of your happiness.
Nothing.
You get removed from society in a lot of ways.
Talk about, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Not the shame. Fuck, I'll come back to it. Go ahead.
There's a Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote that I'm going to brutalize with all apologies to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but about the ability to control one's reproduction is like intrinsic to women being a full member of society.